build some garage shelving, but I wanted something a little bit cooler than your standard garage stuff. So I decided to use galvanized steel pipe for my shelf supports. This is a really simple project that gives you kind of a unique shelf look, an industrial shelf look, and I'm going to go through exactly what you need to make it. This is our finished shelf support. We're going to need to make 2 of these, and here's our parts. So what we have here is we've got 1/2 inch by 8 inch long nipples. We've got for our top piece a 1/2 inch close nipple, got a 1/2 inch cap. We're going to have 1 elbow, 1/2 inch elbow. We're going to have 2 T's, all 1/2 inch, and we're going to have 3 floor flanges. These are actually the most expensive part of the build. They're like $6 a piece. Everything else is under a couple dollars. So I'm going to show you exactly how to put this together. The size of your nipple will all depend on how wide you want your shelf. We're going for approximately 7.5 inches wide, so we went with an 8 inch nipple. The nipple just screws into your floor flange. From there, you're going to go ahead and attach an elbow, and that's going to create the first arm. And all you have to do is just hand tighten this stuff. So there's that piece. From there, just grab another nipple. And these nipples are all the same length. They're all 8 inches, which makes assembly a lot easier. Grab a T and grab another nipple. This is going to be your wall support, your second wall support. Put a floor flange on that. You install another T. Last floor flange. And at the top, you're going to go ahead and use this close nipple, which is basically just threads on top of threads. You're going to put this on the top, and then you're just going to use a cap to kind of give it a nice finishing touch. And that's how easy it is to build these shelf brackets. For the actual shelving material, I chose 1x8 pine. And what I did was I got a piece that's 48 inches long, and I cut it down to 7¼ inches. The reason that I did that is between flange to fitting is 7¼ inches. And that'll make my shelf fit right in between there, nice and tight. That way I don't have to screw it in place or glue it in place or anything like that. It basically just fits right in between here, snug enough to where it's not going to go anywhere. For finishes, I'm going with a general finish brand, and it's Java, so it's going to be really dark. I like gel stain, so I'm sticking with that. Before you commit to actually staining your project, always double check it on a scrap piece of wood and make sure that the stain looks the way you want it to. A lot of times the way it's pictured on the label or on the little cards isn't exactly what it's going to turn out on your particular piece of wood. So double check before you commit. If you notice, one thing that I didn't do that I normally advocate is I didn't sand my wood. I didn't prep it. I wanted to give it that kind of rough look that it has straight off the shelf. And as you can see, that's exactly what we got. You know, it's garage shelving. I didn't want it to be a perfect finish. I wanted it to have a little bit of texture to it. Another thing that you can do is, I'm just brushing the stain on, but if you want a little bit lighter, a little bit more variation in the color, if you wipe it off, you can see that it gives you a little bit more variation and brings out more of the wood tone. After it's soaked in for a few minutes, just go back and just wipe off the excess. So here's what it looks like. It's pretty much exactly what I'm after. Kind of like that rustic barn look. I'm going to go ahead and flip it over and do the other side. If you want to do that, make sure you have these little painting triangles, because that just puts a little bit of pressure on a single spot of the board and it won't mar your surface. shelves dry, we're going to go ahead and install our support brackets. What I'm going to do next is find my studs. We're in a garage, so it's pretty easy to see where the taping was because there's no paint on these walls. It's just a light texture. I'm still going to use this sensor, stud sensor. This one's made by Franklin Sensors, and it's the best one I've actually used. So you just hit the button, and it lights up right when it finds a stud. Now I'm just going to mark my wall, and I know where to drill. Next, what I'm going to do is grab a level and eyeball kind of where I want the bottom of the shelf to be, and then mark my line for my pilot holes. Before we screw this to the stud, make sure your floor flanges line up like this, because the top and bottom holes are what we're going to use. The side holes we're not going to utilize, and if it all lines up, it'll be a lot easier to install. 2-inch drywall screws should hold fine. Your flanges aren't all lined up properly, you're going to have a problem with fitting it onto the wall. So if you got any issues with that, just tighten or loosen some of those down. That should solve the problem. Once you have the first screw in, make sure everything's lined up by throwing a level onto your flanges before you put your second screw down. Now we're going to repeat the same thing for bracket number 2. Before I go on and attach the remaining 5 drywall screws, I'm going to throw my level on to make sure everything's okay, and it actually needs to come up by about 1/4 of an inch. So it's a good thing I did that. Right now it's easy for me to correct, but if I had all 6 screws in, I'd be doing a little bit of drywall patching. This time it looks good, so we'll go ahead and fasten it down. This is the stuff I'm going to use for our top coat to protect our wood. It's called Permalac. If you don't have it around, polyurethane will do just fine. Even a rub-on poly will work. Only difference is Permalac is a little bit tougher. Even though we're going for a rustic finish, use a tack cloth, wipe it down. You're going for rustic, not the I don't know what I'm doing look. So this is what the Permalac satin finish looks like. Polyurethane will look exactly the same, but it's just enough to wake up that wood. Now I'm just going to coat the back side of our shelving units. Once the top coat's dry, just slide the boards in place. See, if you cut them to fit, they'll fit right in between the flange and the fitting. You can do this project from start to finish in about 2 hours. And the nice thing about it is you can go ahead and make it any size you want by varying the size of these nipples. We went with the 8-inch nipples, but you can go with any size that suits your needs. Make it as wide or as narrow as you like. Make it fit anywhere you want.